Hey everybody, this is Professor Lilly, and I want to talk to you about the final project in the final few weeks of the semester. So, we just wrapped up the television genre group module, and everybody just finished looking at some of the other groups and commenting on what they did. And this week, I'm going to be grading those. Each person's going to get an individual grade. A lot of the feedback will be the same for the different people in the same group, but I'm going to be going through and doing that this week for the so one grade for that whole module. Okay, so then the next few weeks, basically you have 2 weeks to work on the final project, and that's like 95% of this video. I'm just going to talk about the final project, and then the last week of class. So you submit this, and again, I'm going to talk about it in a lot more detail. But 2 weeks from yesterday, Sunday, April 25th, is when you submit it. So you have 2 weeks to work on it, and then that last week of class, you're going to be looking at other people's final projects, and we're just going to be talking about the final projects, and it's like just a good way to kind of wrap up a course like this. Um, and then you can see here, so there's been some pressure to make sure we have exams in all courses, and I certainly can make an argument that, instead of having a final exam, we have a final project. But I do want to have a final exam, but don't freak out about it, because it's only going to be for me to get feedback from you. So you're going to get credit for doing it. So don't forget to do it. But it's only going to be questions, since this is the first time this course has been completely revised from what it was before, and it's the first time I've done it, and it's the first time it's been a asynchronous online only class, and that's what it's going to be going forward. So it's important for me to get feedback from you to find out, like, what did you like, what did you feel like really worked, and what would you want improvement on. I mean, for example, we obviously we did a lot of stuff about just general what is pop culture, and then monster theory as a way to think about and analyze certain types of text, and then we did the music module, and then we did the TV module. And certainly the difficulty in a course like this is that there's so many different things you could possibly do. Like, you could have a whole course on sports in popular culture, for example. But anyway, I just want to get some feedback. So one thing this course never will be is because we're not supposed to do Zoom meetings and stuff like that. I mean, I could do individually if someone had questions, but I'm not supposed to do Zoom meetings because there's not supposed to be a specific meeting time every week, right? So there's certain things we're tied to do or able to do in an asynchronous kind of weekly course, and other things we're not allowed to do. But anyway, this is just to get your feedback. It'll probably take like 10 or like 15 20 minutes for you to answer these questions, and it's not going to be due until, you can see here that I set it to open up that last week of class, and then you could take it all the way through during the final exam weeks. I mean, so you kind of decide. You just have to take it once. It'll take you 20 minutes, and you'll just get participation credit for it. So it's not going to have multiple choice or questions, essay questions, anything like that. Just questions about your experience in the course. So I just wanted to mention that. I'll mention it again later. Okay, so let's talk about the final project. So I went through here. Someone alerted me that I pasted in some of the wrong information, so I've gone through and I've made sure everything in here is right and appropriate for the final project. So when you submit it, there's two things you need to do. You need to drop it in here. So if it's like a PowerPoint presentation, you could submit it here, or a Word document or something like that, or if it's something online like a YouTube video for your presentation or a Prezi, then just create a Word document and paste that link in there, or a Google Doc. So if it's Google Doc, it has to be something that's available to the public or available to anyone with that link. So make sure you check your sharing with that. So it has to be whoever can click on it can see it. So submit it here. And then also, you should submit it in this discussion forum here. So whatever your group is, if you're a group of one, then you do it. If you're a group of 2 or 3, then just one person submits, creates a new post in this discussion forum, and paste the link or paste the document so that other people in the class can see it. Obviously, when you do it here, only I can see it. Okay, and the grading rubric will be attached to this. So let me just go through the parameters. At this point, everyone knows if they're doing it by themselves or in a group. One thing to note with the group, so the size and depth of your presentation, your project should be associated with how many people in the group, right? So if you have 2 or 3 people, then you need to be each person doing about the same amount of work and extra work, or not extra, but 3 persons amount of work, going more in depth on the different prompts. And at this point, everyone's gotten my feedback from Moodle, like the individual members and or group. So you have 3 options here. So if you feel more comfortable with the traditional research essay that you might, the kind of essay you would turn in for, I don't know, like history class or theology or maybe one of your English classes, so traditional research paper, then you can do it in that format. And I'm saying 5 to 8 pages because I think that's how many pages you would probably need in order to answer all these prompts and answer them fully. And considering that I'm also asking you to include graphics, photos, things like that to help make your case and to illustrate it to your audience, which is me and other members of the class who are reading your presentation or reading your paper. So if you feel like the more traditional kind of research essay or research paper is the most comfortable for you, then do it like that and submit it as a Word doc or a PDF. In this class, we've also been doing a lot of presentation formats, so everyone should be familiar with that. And that's good because and certainly you could do this in an essay format too, but you can use lots of bulleted lists where appropriate, like where you're just talking about lists of songs or list of numbers or stats or something like that. But then where appropriate, you also will need to have certain areas where you're just answering in paragraphs, like your narrative analysis where you're describing symbolism and things like that. You can't do that in a bulleted list. You have to have a full paragraph or 2 to describe that in detail. So my guess is to kind of do this fully and answer all the prompts, and also depending on how much you put into each slide, that we're going to be talking about at least 20 to 30 slides. And again, it kind of depends on the way you like to do presentations and how much you pack into the slides. If it's only 20, I'm thinking those are going to be pretty packed with information. So don't just like create 20 slides and say, oh, I've done it, because the grading is all going to be associated with you answering fully the different prompts, right? So that's just kind of my guess as where I think it would probably end up being to answer this fully. Same thing here. Put in graphics, infographics, photos of iconic aspects or screenshots or whatever of your cultural text, and then also you should always link to and cite it on every slide and every sentence or area where you include some sort of information from a source, right? So don't just throw those citations at the very end and not say in each slide which one of the sources you got the information from, because in each slide where I want to know where that information, whatever bit of information, where it came from. So link to it on the slide, and then obviously at the very end you'll have a whole works cited slide or page at the very end. And then lastly, and one thing I do recommend for any presentation is sometimes it's nice to hear the presenter's voice, as if you were coming to class and doing a presentation. You would have the PowerPoint up there, but you would be standing there and kind of talking us through it. So you can do this in PowerPoint and in Google Slides too. Voice annotation is what they call it, or voiceover. And when you do this, and you don't necessarily have to do it on every slide, but just certain slides, like maybe for the narrative analysis where you're kind of talking through. And if you're talking through that in detail, sometimes you can get away with having more bulleted list of things as prompts to remind you what to say than paragraph form. So if you narrate it, then its bullets are better because you're saying the paragraph basically, in your voice. But when you do this, then it creates a video format, and you would upload that to PDF. So, I'm sorry, upload that to YouTube, and then give us the link. And then you can have what I call a video presentation, which is kind of basically what I'm doing right now, right? And also some of the lectures, right? So some of the lectures I did for the course, I had a PowerPoint, and I started off on Moodle, and then I went to the PowerPoint and talked over a couple slides, and then like I'm about to do right now, or in a bit, to illustrate some of the things I want you to do, is I have a couple websites pulled up. So you could... there's lots of different software you can use. Like you can use a QuickTime player, and you can record at the same time what's on the screen, and a little, a head and shoulders shot of you sitting down or sitting at a desk talking, and then it also records your screen. So. And if anyone's not sure of how to do that, but you want to do the video type format, then just send me an email, and I'll give you some more resources. But anyway, then you could go and say, okay, now I'm going to show you this clip and show a video clip, and now I'm going to go to and talk about some of the fan community sites that I found, right? So you can kind of take us through that, and then also maybe have PowerPoint up to show a couple slides. To talk in more detail about your analysis. So anyway, you can choose this type of format, a video presentation type format, again, similar to the lectures that I give. And that would probably, you're going to be well prepared and probably end up running you about 15 or 20 minutes of video. But that includes some PowerPoint slides that you show with more detailed. And then you'll just end it with a full works cited list. So if I'm looking at it, then I could just pause the video in order to be able to see that works cited list. And then regardless of which presentation or which format you use, then at the very end, put your full citations of works cited at the very end. Okay, so in terms of that, so I'm requiring that you cite at least 10 articles, and these are going to be web articles and scholarly articles, and then I'm saying at least 4 have to be scholarly. So what I mean by scholarly, I mean if you found a book on the subject, if you found a article in a database. I was just going to give you examples of if I was doing a research on Game of Thrones, and so this is Google Scholar. So if you log into the library, Loyola Notre Dame Library website with your account, then you can also use Google Scholar, or rather you can get the full PDF versions of anything. There's also, you could just search for a topic directly on the library website, and there's under advanced you can click peer-reviewed articles, and then you would only get articles from scholarly journals. And so make sure you cite, again, I'm saying you have to have at least 4 scholarly type resources, sources of information, as opposed to kind of more general information that you might find on the web. So experts or reviews of your movie or reviews of your albums, like critics writing about it or something like that, or industry analysts writing about your band or your television producer, whoever it is, or whatever it is. Those count as the 10, but they don't necessarily count as the 4 scholarly sources. What else did I say? Okay, so, I know some of your group projects that you've done might have touched on your topic depending on what you chose. And I'm saying I'm not allowing you to just go to those presentations that you've already written or essays and just cut and paste from them, okay? Because I will notice and that would be considered plagiarism. But you can, if you found a really good article in your TV or music genre research, and you've already read it for that research project, then certainly you can use the same article again. So you would cite it, and you would write a new sentence or whatever the thing is that you want us to say or quote from it for your topic this time. And so, and also the ones that were assigned. So there were several assigned readings for both of those big modules for music and TV. And if they have informed you on whatever your present genre is that you're researching, then certainly you can cite those articles again. Okay, I'm saying you're not allowed to just copy and paste from those old articles, or rather from those old previous research assignments. So now I'm just going to go through. There's 5 parts for the project: the introduction, genre analysis, narrative analysis, fan community or audience analysis, and then just a conclusion with your work cited. Okay, so there's 5 parts. And in terms of the prompts here, I've noticed that some of you like to just take all the prompts and just paste them in, and then under each one to answer it, which helps you to make sure that you remember to answer the different aspects. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you want to, I do want you to have at least the 5 parts listed so that I can track it, and then you can have your own subtitles, because I will notice, for example, if you forget to do the semiotic analysis, or you don't, and I will also recognize that when you start talking about symbolism. For my project, I decided to watch 1 season of this particular show, and looking at, I saw this sort of symbolism associated with gender roles, or with race, or whatever it is, or with character development of this particular character. So I'll recognize that you're doing semiotic analysis, and if I see that you're adding the psychoanalysis aspects, looking at gender, race, or emotional development within characters, then I'll notice that you're doing that. And if you start talking about nostalgia and what you noticed, then I'll see that as well. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to paste all these prompts in and then just go through each one. But you do need to make sure you remember to put these things in. So if you don't just paste all the prompts, then just make sure you're going through and you're covering all these bases. I know with all these prompts, sometimes it might be frustrating just in terms of formatting. So like I said, you only really have to have the 5 parts mentioned as headers so that I can track what you're doing. Okay, so for part 1, basically I just want to hear about why you chose that particular text, and then just some basic overview. So if I was doing the Game of Thrones television show, then I would talk about who David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and how they got into the idea of taking these books from George R. Martin, and then basically how successful it was and how many seasons there was. And basically I chose Wikipedia because it's a lot of the basics that you have here. So I personally, I know that high school professor or teachers will say never use Wikipedia, and my 2 cents about Wikipedia, it's all as good as that page is, right? Because there can be total experts who are associated with Wikipedia who are creating these pages. So I mean, sometimes you can't get anything better. Now, sometimes you could have a Wikipedia page that's made by one person, and it's not really verified information. So you have to gauge, is this a great resource of information? And usually what I would do, like if I was researching, then I would come first to the Wikipedia page if it has a whole bunch of information, and then I would use that to go to some of these other cited sources to get more information, okay? I don't mind if you cite Wikipedia as just one of your sources, but really what I would rather you do is then go and to click on some of these other sources to get more information. Now, granted, in Wikipedia, usually sometimes it goes to other Wikipedia pages, right? But certainly you can use it as a starting off point and it's good here just to show like what a general kind of overview of Game of Thrones in this example kind of looks like. So that's kind of what I'm looking for the introduction. And then in the introduction, I also have you doing the political economy information, like about the production and industry details. And I want to know, like, how much did the whole, whatever the cultural object is, did it cost to create, or how much, how popular was it? What are the rankings? Like, if it's a video game, then you can find out what it ranks in terms of popularity and sales compared to other similar video games. And you can find out like how much like the producers are being paid, how much any kind of famous actors are being paid, like all those kind of financial details is what I'm looking for. And then at the very end, kind of what was the general reception. So, and some of your cultural texts might not have been that popular at the very beginning, or they might have been like groundbreaking. And so, that's also what I'm interested in. I mean, is this just a kind of a typical example of this kind of cultural text in this genre, or was it like Game of Thrones, which was really groundbreaking in a lot of ways in terms of kind of opening up a new kind of epic television show, fantasy genre that was hugely popular and made a whole lot of money and made a lot of people's careers, really. Or was it just kind of a run-of-the-mill example of that particular genre? Okay, and now we have the genre analysis. So this, again, should be very familiar with you because you basically did the same thing for the TV module, and before that, the music module. I want you to find at least an article that helps you to classify this within a genre, right? So for both the music and the TV module, there were readings that kind of help you to and in fact, there is that one reading that's, I think, that was included, I think, in the TV module, that pretty much for any genre, you could go back to that article. In terms of classification, and it's more of a sociological article, and you could use that to say, well, here's how the different characteristics we could use for this particular genre, even if it's a video game or a YouTuber or social media or whatever it is. So find something, an article to help you to define the characteristics of the genre, and therefore be able to say, well, here's how this particular cultural object fits within this genre. Then I want to have like a fairly detailed history of the genre, and I'm interested in knowing how it's changed. All of your genres have changed a lot since whenever that particular genre was first created. Like something like video games, like it has a beginning point, right, through to today. And then any controversies associated with it. And for some of you, I mean, certainly probably for all of you, youth culture kind of came in to a certain aspect, but maybe not. So it kind of depends on what's your cultural text or cultural object that you're focusing on. And, for some of you, like some of the music choices that some of you made, then it's going to be really big. For some of the TV shows or films, probably so as well, and certainly for the video games. So most of your choices will have some aspect of youth culture. And and I did want to mention that some of your kind of flow of your presentations will vary or can vary depending on what your topic is. So, for example, if it's fine with me if you talk about youth culture here in the fan community audience analysis. So if you're doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer and they were explicitly going after teen audiences and that really worked out for them, they have this huge kind of teen fan base, then go ahead and put it in here, and I will notice that it's there instead of being up here in the genre analysis, okay? So that's fine if you kind of want to change things around. And then now we have the narrative analysis again. You did this in the TV module, a little bit less maybe, or maybe it might have been a little bit more difficult in the music module, depending on what genre you were working in. So again, but all these kind of terms should be familiar with, or you should be familiar with them at this point. So the semiotic analysis looking for symbolism, psychoanalysis, this should probably be bolded, looking at character development and any issues of gender or race or sexuality. And and again, it kind of depends on your cultural object, right? So this might even be like, I think one of you is doing Grateful Dead shows, like, and so that's more of a performance that you would be doing a narrative analysis for. A couple of you are doing video games, so you have to think about, well, what is the overall narrative? Like, narrative can include like advertisements that show how people interact with this video game. It might include like a lot of video games include kind of like little narratives, like videos showing the characters and what they do in this game. There might be all sorts of aspects going into like the narrative of what the kind of fictional world of this video game is, right? Which is not quite as streamlined or coherent because it's many, many cultural texts coming together to make that narrative, and not quite as kind of straightforward as doing a narrative analysis of one film, right? In this section, please get some screen captures, photos, whatever you can do to include those, so that as the person you're presenting to, me and the other me and the students can, or your peers can kind of understand what you're talking about at different aspects of the narrative analysis. So any screen captures from the film, or probably if you're doing an album or a particular song for your in your analysis, then put or embed a link to, or even embed a video on YouTube of the song, so that I can go listen to the song, or and your peers can listen to the song. And then also the next aspect, so it kind of, again, depends on what the cultural text is. So if you're doing a sitcom, then there's going to be lots of aspects of social roles and whether or not they're being kind of conventionally portrayed, or they're trying to be buckled in this particular sitcom or movie. There'll be something to talk about that there. Any text that you chose that kind of talks about the past will probably have some aspect of nostalgia in there, and you can quote the any articles that we've already read, or some that you can find where talk about nostalgia for your text or your genre, and then also whatever the identity kind of claims are made in the text. And again, it depends on your text about which one or which of these you're going to talk most about. It all depends on what your selection was. And then the last main part is the fan, community, or audience analysis. So I included both these terms because it depends on your cultural text, right? So some of your text, like Game of Thrones, for example, there's this, and this website has been going on for a couple, I don't know, I want to say like 20 years, because the books have been going on for at least that long. And these are fans who are talking in detail about the books and the TV show, right? And now the TV show's over, it's a little bit less robust, but all the discussions are still there, and people are still anticipating the next book, and then also the next series associated with the same world, even though it takes place, I think, a couple centuries before the Game of Thrones TV series did. But yeah, so if I'm looking at the fan community, this is where a lot of the robust interaction is happening. But on YouTube, there's all sorts of fan created videos, like talking about certain characters that people love, or just certain scenes that people love. They're creating like almost music videos, like piecing together clips about a certain aspect of the show that they enjoy. So there's all sorts of kind of fan fiction, is what I would call it, or tributes on YouTube. So Game of Thrones is an example that there really is a lot of intense fan community engagement, right? But if you chose a cultural text that's just kind of like a run-of-the-mill film or sitcom, it might be a little bit more difficult to find like a really rich fan community, but there is obviously an audience, right? So you can focus more on who was the audience and where do we find audience members talking about this particular text. Now, you might not find, if we think about the fan communities as a implicit religion article, you might not find people who are really talking in depth about whatever the cultural object is, and who might not be like getting together in the same way and creating rituals around their love of this particular text or group of texts, right? So it kind of depends, is there a robust fan community for your cultural text, or is it more like an audience of people who like it, but maybe they also like other shows and in that same genre? And lastly, so I'm first looking for you to find, where are these people getting together and talking about this text? YouTube, Instagram. So here again, have lots of screen captures, links to these places. One thing to note about the requirement for 10 plus articles, that does not include these. So, I do want you to link to these so that your peers and myself can see them. But, for those 10 plus articles, we're talking about articles that are substantively talking about and giving information on the whatever the cultural text and or genre. So these don't like throw in these in your works cited. And then I'm interested in which one or where the most robust kind of audience or fan engagement is going on. And then finally, and there's a little bit back and forth between these two, but talk about some of the most impressive or interesting examples of fan fiction or memes, because a lot of these popular culture texts, memes are created about them, right? So I thought that would be a fun way to kind of end it. So if I was doing it for Game of Thrones, I might pick a few of my favorite fan fiction videos that people have created. And then also there's some great memes associated with Game of Thrones, the TV series as well. And then lastly, part 5, up to this point, you should really be approaching this as almost like a social scientist, like you're a researcher, and a lot of this type of research you might be doing if you were hired by a firm to kind of research making a new movie or a new TV show or something like that, to better understand audiences and better understand competitors and what has been successful in the past, right? So you really should be kind of approaching it as a social scientist, trying to understand better about this aspect of popular culture and focusing in on one particular show. And with that in mind, I'm giving you a chance to kind of give your more personal opinion at the very end and say, what do you think is the overall cultural impact of this text or object? One thing I haven't mentioned so much is for some of your objects or group of objects are so expansive that you do want to kind of focus down, right? So if you chose, I think someone chose the whole Harry Potter TV or film series, which is so expansive, right? But she did give several areas where she's going to focus in on particular issues and particular characters, right? So if you open up, if your kind of universe is so big because of whatever you've chosen as your cultural text, remember you do want to focus in on a particular topic or two to help focus in your analysis and making sure that you're not writing a whole complete book about it, because a lot of these topics, whole books could be written about it. And then lastly, just make sure you include, whatever your format is, a list of full citations for all the articles that you've cited in your presentation or paper. Okay, so again, this is all, this is pretty detailed, which is the reason why you get 2 whole weeks to work on it. There's nothing else. There's no other assignments, right? So this is the one thing. but you do need to spend significant time and get into it and have fun with it, but pay attention to these prompts. And I would recommend parsing it out. Do work a couple hours throughout the week, and then the next week after that, and then just make sure you have a nice polished presentation or paper at the very end to submit by Sunday, April 25th. Okay. If you're having questions or difficulties, then just email me and tell me what you're thinking or your questions, and I will get back to you pretty quick. And that's it. So have a great time. I've given everyone feedback on your project proposal, and that's where most of you said, here's what my focus is going to be. And some of you have offered other ideas to make it even more focused. So if you have any questions, just email me. And don't forget, though, to submit by, and I'll send out a reminder, but you basically have 2 weeks, Sunday, April 25th, okay? And then we'll be talking about all your presentations the week after that.